Let us imagine a scenario that, while purely hypothetical, forces us to confront the fragility of our national stability. The date is October 26, 2025. Former President Rodrigo Duterte has been transferred to the custody of the International Criminal Court. He is being held at the detention facility in The Hague, Netherlands, awaiting trial. Then suddenly, the unthinkable happens. He disappears. The news does not come from an official government channel at first, but through a chaotic torrent of unverified social media posts and fragmented international news alerts. He is simply gone from his secure cell, with no immediate explanation from the ICC or the Dutch authorities. Initial reports are confusing, contradictory, and ripe for speculation. A vacuum of information is immediately filled by fear and anger. This event would strike at the very heart of the nation's psyche. It is more than the disappearance of a citizen. It is the disappearance of a figure who for 6 years commanded the state and inspired a movement that reshaped the nation. His supporters view him as a messianic figure, a protector who brought order through an iron fist. His detractors see him as the architect of a brutal campaign that defied human rights. The ambiguity: was he abducted by enemies, extracted by allies, or did some other unforeseen event occur? Conspiracy theories would flourish, tailored to political agendas and designed to provoke strong emotional responses. The first few hours would be critical. The national government in Manila would be in a precarious position, struggling to verify facts with international bodies, also scrambling for answers. Every moment of official silence would be interpreted as incompetence, complicity, or a cover-up. Public trust would erode when it is most needed. Did the current administration fail to protect him? Was this an act of a foreign power? Was it a plot by political opponents? These questions would echo from the coffee shops of Makati to the barangay halls of Mindanao. This is a stress test for our democratic institutions. It challenges chain of command, the professionalism of our security forces, and leaders' ability to communicate and lead with a steady hand. No modern precedent exists for a disappearance from an international tribunal. The Philippines would be forced to navigate international law, domestic politics, and raw public emotion under a global media spotlight. The aftermath would not just be about finding a missing person. It would be about holding a divided nation together and preventing it from unraveling under suspicion and rage. In the immediate aftermath of the news, the Philippines would be engulfed by a maelstrom amplified and distorted by the chaotic ecosystem of social media. Millions of his loyal supporters who see him as a father figure and the nation's savior would feel a profound sense of betrayal and rage. They would see his disappearance from a secure facility in a first-world country as proof of a grand conspiracy orchestrated by powerful enemies, foreign domestic. Memes, videos, impassioned posts demanding justice and retribution would go viral. Nasaan ang Pangulo. Katarungan para kay Duterte dominate the online landscape and incite anger. Opponents of the former president and ICC supporters would be plunged into anxiety and fear. They might suspect a staged extraction, a calculated move to pull him from justice and destabilize the government. Fears of a coup d'etat or a violent uprising by loyalists within the security forces. This group calls for calm and adherence to the rule of law, but their voices are drowned out. Mainstream media, caught between reporting facts and pressure to fill an information void. Newsrooms work around the clock seeking confirmation from The Hague and from Manila. Every news report is scrutinized with accusations of bias from both sides. Pro-Duterte bloggers and vloggers launch coordinated attacks on established outlets accusing them of a yellow or liberal conspiracy. The spread of disinformation makes it hard for the average citizen to tell fact from fiction. The shockwave spills onto the streets, spontaneous gatherings in key urban centers. The response would not be uniform, it would be deeply fractured along regional, ethnic, and linguistic lines. The Philippines is not a monolith, it's a tapestry of distinct cultural identities. Political loyalties are tied to regional pride. This is most pronounced in Mindanao and parts of the Visayas. Duterte is the first president from the south. For many Mindanaoans, it symbolized a shift from Imperial Manila. His disappearance would be seen as an attack on their region, an insult to collective honor. That solidarity could become a powerful, unified response. Governors, mayors. Other local political figures would face intense pressure. They might condemn the national government, demand answers, and even hint at non-cooperation with central authorities. The loyalty and professionalism of the armed forces of the Philippines and the Philippine National Police would immediately become the most critical variable in determining whether the nation holds together or unravels. These institutions are the state's ultimate guarantors of order. They are not monolithic. Political and regional pressures affect them. President Duterte spent 6 years cultivating deep personal loyalties within the security sector. He appointed numerous generals from Mindanao to top posts. He granted significant pay raises and benefits. Many officers and enlisted personnel would harbor a strong personal or institutional allegiance to the former commander-in-chief, creating a potential conflict between their sworn duty and their personal sympathies. The initial hours would see the AFP and PNP leadership placed under unimaginable pressure. The constitutional chain of command requires they take orders from the sitting president and civilian government. The official directive would almost certainly be one of maximum restraint, to maintain peace and order, to protect critical infrastructure, and to allow the political and diplomatic process to unfold. Yet influential factions within the military and police tied to Duterte might push for a more aggressive posture. They could argue the government's response is too weak, saying the honor of their former leader and the nation is at stake, deepening divisions in command. This internal tension could produce a dangerously inconsistent response on the ground. In Manila, national headquarters units might show professional restraint with protesters. In regional hotspots like Davao, local commanders who owe their careers to Duterte might act differently. They could refuse to disperse pro-Duterte rallies, or they could use excessive force against perceived anti-Duterte elements. The same fragmentation could hit the military. Some divisions might stay in barracks, upholding neutrality. Others, led by loyalist commanders, could make symbolic movements or issue statements that challenge central authority. Worst case, open fragmentation of the security forces. High-ranking, charismatic generals publicly breaking with the government and declaring allegiance to Duterte could trigger a schism. This wouldn't necessarily be an immediate traditional coup. It could be an insidious unraveling. Police precincts go rogue or military battalions go rogue, pledging loyalty to local warlords or to a shadow pro-Duterte command. The political and social turmoil would inevitably trigger severe and immediate economic consequences, beginning with widespread unrest in the nation's economic heartland, Metro Manila. As news and rumors of the former president's disappearance intensify, major thoroughfares like EDSA could become impassable, choked by massive competing demonstrations. Enraged supporters would demand justice and action, while civil society groups and opposition supporters organized counter-rallies, pleading for calm. Friction could erupt into street clashes, turning Makati into a volatile zone of conflict, and Bonifacio Global City into a volatile zone of conflict, forcing a city of over 13 million people into a state of lockdown. This urban paralysis would send a shockwave through the national economy. Transportation crippled, public safety uncertain, businesses would shutter their doors. Malls, offices, factories, construction sites, daily wage earners would lose their income. The Philippine Stock Exchange could suspend trading or suffer a catastrophic crash. The Philippine peso would plummet against the dollar. Local investors, foreign investors would scramble to move capital to safer havens. Capital flight would pressure foreign currency reserves and the banking system. The crisis would cascade to the daily lives of ordinary Filipinos. People would rush supermarkets to hoard essentials like rice, canned food, water, leading to empty shelves and price gouging. Long lines would form at ATMs and banks as citizens try to withdraw their savings, potentially triggering a liquidity crisis if banks cannot meet the sudden demand for cash. Supply chains would break. Goods from the provinces wouldn't reach cities, and goods from cities wouldn't reach the provinces, creating shortages of food in urban areas and a collapse in income for farmers and producers in the countryside. The economic pain would be swift, deep, and indiscriminate. In the long term, the country's economic reputation would be in tatters. International credit rating agencies would swiftly downgrade the Philippines' sovereign debt rating, making it more expensive for the government and Filipino companies to borrow money. Foreign direct investment, which is crucial for job creation and infrastructure development, would dry up completely as the country is relabeled as a high-risk, politically unstable nation. The tourism industry, a key source of foreign exchange, would collapse. It would take years, if not decades, to rebuild the trust of the international business community, leaving a legacy of lost opportunities, higher unemployment, and entrenched poverty long after the immediate political crisis has passed. The crisis would not unfold in a vacuum. It would immediately draw the attention of major global and regional powers, each with its own strategic interests in the Philippines. The United States, as a treaty ally, would find itself in an extremely delicate position. Washington would officially call for calm, respect for the rule of law, and the upholding of the Philippine Constitution. Behind the scenes, the Pentagon and State Department would be deeply concerned about stability. Their primary fear would be the collapse of the AFP command structure. That collapse could jeopardize decades of military cooperation. It could also endanger intelligence sharing, and it would upset the strategic balance of power in the South China Sea. The U.S. would be hesitant to intervene directly, but would use diplomatic channels to support the constitutional government. China might see the chaos as a strategic opportunity. Duterte's pivot to Beijing could push his allies to seek Chinese support. Publicly, China would call for non-interference. Privately, China could offer political and economic support to pro-Duterte factions. More alarmingly, Beijing could exploit the distraction to assert claims in the West Philippine Sea. The International Criminal Court and the Dutch government would be central to the narrative, yet constrained. Other regional players would be watching closely. ASEAN member states would worry about instability spilling over. That could lead to a refugee crisis, or it could disrupt vital sea lanes of communication. ASEAN would likely call for a peaceful resolution through its framework, but their ability to influence events would be limited. Japan and South Korea would be primarily concerned with the safety of their nationals. They would also worry about the security of their investments. Those countries would pressure Manila to restore order quickly. Investigators would face intense pressure to explain the former president's disappearance. A slow, methodical investigation would clash with demands for immediate answers. That disconnect could leave the Philippines dangerously isolated, a pawn in a larger geopolitical game. In the face of such a monumental crisis, the path away from the abyss lies not in anger, not in violence, but in a collective, deliberate commitment to constitutional processes, national unity, peace. The single most important first step must come from the nation's legitimate leadership. The sitting president must address the nation immediately, not with speculation, but with a calm, steady, and empathetic voice. This address should acknowledge the public's anger and confusion, commit unequivocally to discovering the truth through all available diplomatic channels and legal channels, and, most importantly, issue a clear and unambiguous order to the AFP and the PNP to uphold their oath to the Constitution and the flag, not to any individual. This show of decisive leadership is essential to shore up the chain of command and reassure the public. Simultaneously, a broad coalition of society's most respected voices must come together to amplify the call for sobriety. Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines. Ulama Council of the Philippines respected business chambers, academic institutions, and nonpartisan civil society organizations. Their collective appeal for calm, for dialogue over confrontation, and for faith in institutions can act as a powerful counterbalance to extremism and division. By demonstrating a united front of moral and civic leadership, they can help lower the political temperature and create space for rational discourse, reminding Filipinos of their shared identity that transcends political affiliation. The legal and constitutional process must be seen to be working. The Department of Justice should provide regular, transparent updates on the government's diplomatic engagement with the ICC and Dutch authorities. The Philippine Congress should convene a special session not for political grandstanding, but as a national forum for unity, allowing representatives from all regions and parties to contribute to a unified national strategy. Upholding these processes, even when slow, demonstrates a commitment to the rule of law, which is the ultimate bedrock of a stable democracy. It shows the world and the Filipino people that the nation's framework of governance is resilient. Finally, the responsibility does not lie with leaders alone. It rests upon every citizen. In an age of rampant disinformation, each person has the power to be a circuit breaker. Resist the urge to share unverified rumors, actively seek out credible news sources, and engage in respectful conversations with friends and family who hold different views. Organize prayer vigils instead of angry mobs, participate in peaceful assemblies. Use the tools of democracy. Petitions dialogue with local officials and community building to channel grief and anger into constructive action. A nation is not just its institutions, it is its people. If the people choose unity over division, peace over violence, and hope over fear, then even in the face of an unthinkable crisis, the Philippines will not unravel. It will endure. End of briefing.